Hey there, Georgie here with Ukraine Matters. Treason. Today we're going to be discussing treason in the midst of United States government. I believe recent leaks leave no doubt about it, and I'm going to try to make my case for why it is treason undoubtedly. But it's not going to be only talking about US. Today is actually going to be a hat trick of news revealing things that we were not expecting, and that Russia is a big part of those. So stay up for those and let's begin. We're gonna start talking first and foremost about Comrade Witkov right over here, because he has built himself a reputation that is pretty one-sided. As a big Putin lover and a person that stated that he doesn't think Putin is a bad guy, and he's seen on the video meeting with Putin looking like a nice good old dog that is just wagging his tail at the sight of his master.
What do you think of him? I liked him. Yep.
But now Tovarish Steve is finding himself in a completely different scenario, because Bloomberg has released some of the most damning evidence of his collusion with Russians that entails basically working for the Russian state. In these tapes, we hear a couple of discussions. One, Steve Witkov talking with Yuri Ushakov, Putin top foreign policy aide. And in the second conversation, Kirill Dmitriev, the closest contact Steve Witkov has from the Russian side, talking with the same Yuri Ushakov and discussing the potential for the peace proposal. The discussions they're having are leaving no doubt that the peace proposal has been written in the Kremlin and then handed over to Steve Witkov, that presented this plan as US-made and presented to Ukrainian allies, while also having strong discussions with the Russians and coaching them on how they should approach Donald Trump, that they should reach out to him before key visits from Zelensky and undermine the potential deal on Tomahawks that was about to be made, while also advising what exactly they need to tell to Trump and what exactly they need to do. And the only reason their plan failed is because they are completely incompetent and corrupt. So looking a little bit back into the timeline, US presidential envoy Steve Witkov, fresh from the triumph of the Gaza peace deal, held a phone call last month with a senior Kremlin official to suggest they work together on a similar plan for Ukraine, and that Vladimir Putin should raise it with Donald Trump. In an October 14th phone call that lasted a little over 5 minutes, Witkov advised Yuri Ushakov, Putin's top foreign policy aide, on how the Russian leader should broach the issue with Trump. And before we delve directly into the conversation, let's recap the timeline so we have it in mind. On October 13th, Trump is in Israel and addressing the Knesset on the hostage situation and freeing of the hostages. On October 14th, Witkov speaks to Ushakov discussing Putin-Trump call. On October 16th, Trump is speaking with Putin for 2.5 hours in a call that he refers to as being very productive. And this was where the discussion was heavily about the Tomahawk missiles potentially be delivered to Ukraine, and Zelensky was supposed to come to White House to sort of start agreeing on that potential deal. However, Zelensky meets with Trump on 17th of October, and the discussion goes nowhere. There has been pretty much nothing produced from that conversation. Around October 24th, 26th, Witkov meets with Dmitriev in Miami together with Jared Kushner and J.D. Vance. On October 29th, Ushakov and Dmitriev discussed the Russian strategy in a call. And I think the best thing to do here is just look at the transcripts themselves, because I believe that they're speaking for themselves. Steve Witkov, Yuri, here's what I would do, my recommendation. Ushakov, yes, please. Witkov, I would make the call and just reiterate that you congratulate the president on his achievement, that you supported it, that you respect that he's a man of peace, and you're really glad to have seen it happen. So I would say that I think from that it's going to be a really good call. Because let me tell you, you what I told the president. I told the president that the Russian Federation has always wanted a peace deal. That's my belief. I told the president I believe that. And I believe the issue is that the two nations that are having a hard time coming to a compromise, and when we do, we're going to have a peace deal. I'm even thinking that maybe we set out like a 20-point peace proposal, just like we did in Gaza. We put a 20-point Trump plan together that was 20 points of peace, and I'm thinking maybe we do the same thing with you. Ushakov. Okay, my friend, I think that very point our leaders could discuss. Hey, Steve, I agree with you that we can congratulate. He will say that Mr. Trump is a real peace man and so on. That we will say. Ushakov, I will discuss that with my boss and then I'll come back to you, okay? Witkov, yeah, because listen to what I'm saying. Just want you to say, maybe just to say that to President Putin, because you know I have the deepest respect for President Putin. Maybe he says, President Trump, you know, Steve and Yuri discussed a very similar 20-point plan to peace that could be something that we think might move the needle a little bit. We're open to sort of things to explore what's going to take to get a peace deal done. Now, me to you, I know what's going to take to peace to get done. Donetsk and maybe a land swap somewhere. But I'm saying instead of talking like that, let's talk more hopefully, because I think we're going to get a deal here. And I think, Yuri, the president will give me lots of space and discretion to get this deal. Witkov. And here is one more thing. Zelensky is coming to the White House on Friday. Ushakov, chuckling. Yeah, I know that. Witkov, I will go to that meeting because they want me to be there. But I think it's possible we have the call with your boss before that Friday meeting. And reading this, one might assume, well, this looks like just diplomacy, you know? They're trying to get some kind of deal done and so on. No. That is not what is happening. Because important here is the context and situation in which it is happening. Because Witkov here is not working through official channels. He is working behind the scenes of the protocols of Pentagon, off of the official record, off of the any kind of official negotiations channel right over here. He's just trying to do some kind of a deal with Russia. More than that, he is acting on behalf of Russians here. Not only he is coaching the Russians on how they should prepare their agenda, what exactly they should tell the Trump to get in his favor, he is also then acting on behalf of Russians, putting them into the right position to get ahead of anything that is other ways on agenda. Actions of Witkov here are indistinguishable from a potential Kremlin agent that they would insert into the US administration. He is promoting the Russian agenda, actively promoting, actively sabotaging any kind of Ukrainian agenda, actively sabotaging, I would say, US agenda, because majority of people of United States are specifically willing to support Ukraine and support the allies in Europe against Russia, because Russia is not an ally of United States. The Europe is. Ukraine is, because United States has guaranteed sovereignty of Ukraine. Yet here, behind the backs of everyone, Witkov is completely acting as a coach and agent of Russians. And more than that, in his actions, he is then presenting this deal later on as it was made inside of United States, and we're going to get into it. But most importantly, that not US allies have been informed of these conversations in this deal, but also other official channels. For example, Marco Rubio was not part of this at all. Apparently, the leaks are stating that Rubio was informed just post factum that this deal has been actually put forward to Ukrainians. And we've heard that Rubio's team and Ukrainian team actually butt heads a little bit when they first met in Geneva in the conversations on this deal recently, and it was specifically because the deal was leaked. And Rubio was mad because he and his official team for foreign policy was not really part of this. So they would not want this deal to be perceived as US made, and he needed to kind of find his way around it. And also, Ukrainians were mad because of the actual contents of this deal. But eventually, they found some common ground. And talking about the deal itself, let's jump into the conversation between Ushakov, the foreign policy advisor to Putin, and Dmitriev, this opportunistic person that is in close contact with Witkov. So in a conversation between them, Ushakov, well, we need the maximum, don't you think? I mean, the maximum things for Russia in this deal. What do you think? Otherwise, what's the point of passing anything on? Dmitriev, no, look, I think we'll just make this paper from our position and I'll informally pass it along, making it clear that it's all informal and let them do like their own. But I don't think they'll take exactly our version, but at least it'll be as close to it as possible, essentially implying that Putin may be in conversations with Trump, whatever has been changed, will try to push it towards the Russian side later on. Ushakov, well, that's exactly the point. They might not take it and say that it was agreed with us. That's what I'm afraid of. Dmitriev, no, I'll say it exactly as you say it, word for word. And this is key. Because here we clearly see where it is coming from, the problematic parts in the deal that was later revealed, that it was supposedly written in Russian. Because Witkov is so incredibly incompetent that when this Kremlin written deal, proposal, draft was handed over to Witkov, he was not even competent enough to essentially rewrite this deal, so to say, from US side, but try to appease the Dmitriev, what Kremlin is saying. He literally word for word put it in the Google Translate and translated it directly from Russian with leaving the grammar and all the formulations, which led to then all of the different linguists and AI models to very clearly state that this deal is 100% translated directly from Russians. The incompetence is staggering. Dmitriev, yeah, it seems to me that you can talk later with Steve about this paper and we'll do everything neatly. Again, the origins of everything is coming from the Kremlin. So whatever it is the case, like that the US want to present that they're working and trying to help Ukraine, the truth of the matter is that through Witkov, that is acting as an agent, Kremlin is just preparing a draft paper that is after that translated to English, and then together with Jared Kushner and JD Vance, they are pushing this agenda to both Trump and to the allies working under the Kremlin agenda. Guys, people from United States, your administration is following strictly word for word, as it's stated here, what is Kremlin telling you. We now have the actual proof of Kremlin directing the actions and words of your US administration. I know I'm kind of hammering it down a little bit here, but I just want to be absolutely clear that in absolutely no world this would be normal. And more importantly, in the United States, there are some people that are recognizing it, that lawmakers inside the GOP are kind of stating, like this deal is not okay. But there is still not enough outrage to the whole situation that has been appearing. And more importantly, this is also a big red flag for Europeans. I would actually say not a red flag. I'm going to use football or soccer terms here. It's a red card that is now being handed to the European politicians that were trying to do something and massage Trump in supporting Ukraine. It is now absolutely clear for everyone to see that administration of Donald Trump is working, or at least people inside of that administration are actively working directly guided by the Kremlin. Whatever they thought that they were able to do to move Trump and his administration to support Ukraine, it was all a charade. It is non-existent. It's joke. It's just a clown show, and you are being taken as fools. And we, people living in Europe, are being taken for fools. That is why, most importantly, I'm going to talk about it later, it's what we in Europe are going to be doing next. Because people ask Trump, what you going to do? What you think about this? And he's like, not a big deal. Not a big deal at all. That was the conversation because that is the answer of Trump. I was like, he says, while asked like what he thinks about the leaks. I don't know if he listened to it, but I don't think that he's even fully grasped like just what exactly is happening here. That is why I'm hammering it down. Because the president of the United States, when said like, like your advisors and you yourself being fooled by these advisors directly from Kremlin, and he's like, yeah, whatever. It's just normal. It's just I call it Tuesday. So now we are having this weird situation where Witkoff is absolutely discredited. And you know what's the current actions after specifically Trump saying that it's fine? Next week, Witkoff is going to Russia to talk peace. There we go. This is the situation we are finding ourselves in. And us as Europeans specifically, I absolutely want to send a message to the European politicians and people inside of Europe. Write to your direct representatives about this. This is insane. We are literally just giving away our power to negotiate our future, our stance to the US administration. And if beforehand there was some kind of a plausible deniability that potentially we're able to sway United States to work towards the peace in Europe, peace in Ukraine, and move to support Ukraine more, we now have the receipts here stating that United States administration is being guided by Moscow. We must not, and I underscore once again, must not let Moscow dictate the future of Europe through the back channels that even escape even people inside of US administration, Pentagon, or their intelligence community. This is about our security. It is our time to act. Today, write a mail to your direct representative in Europe, Euro Parliament representative, any politician that you know. This is the time, because we are being screwed over. And as for Ukraine, this is the only place where I'm more or less confident. I know that Ukraine would never accept such a deal coming from Kremlin, just because the contents of that deal are completely unacceptable. But more importantly, I know that Ukraine is also trying to get as much off of dependency from United States. And that is good, especially because now United States is not really helping Ukraine. It's only making money thanks to the Europeans, Canadians as well. I'm sorry that I didn't mention Canadians during my live stream. And other people across the world, Australia, New Zealand, Japan, Korea, and other countries that are supporting Ukraine. Everyone is valuable. But United States is specifically helping Ukraine only because the allies are buying stuff from United States. United States is making money. Therefore, if there is no deal, and now with the deal supposedly changed in the negotiations in Geneva, it's never going to get accepted by Putin. So this would go absolutely nowhere, and it was just a plan to kind of delay and distract the whole thing. Ukraine continues fighting, and I think the most important thing for Ukraine is to focus on internal reforms. The political reform, unity within the nations, the political unity must be done by President Zelensky, and the reforms within the military for Ukraine are badly needed. That is much more important than whatever this political circus around the quote-unquote peace or capitulation deal we're discussing right over here. But I promised you a hat trick, and it is indeed a hat trick. So the second part of the discussion and revelation that we got is recently on Twitter. There have been changes in some of their representation. Specifically, accounts in Twitter started representing from which country or at least region this account is operating from. And we found out a lot of things. Now, there was a lot of discoveries from the MAGA supporters and promoters of Trump and other agenda narratives that were very controversial. Turned out that they were based in different Asian countries, Nigeria, and other places. But this was also true to reveal the Russian propaganda network, because a lot of the pro-Russian and especially accounts that were pretending to be Ukrainians that are critical of Zelensky, critical of the state of the affairs within Ukraine, turned out to be not Ukrainian. It turned out they could be Russian, Belarusian, or even bot farms from India. So, guys, whenever you hear that there is a big discussion or public outcry from Ukrainians about the Zelensky and things within Ukraine, know that it has now been completely revealed. There's way too many to list, but I'm pretty sure if you just Google a little bit, you will easily find those. It is hilarious just how much of a mask-off moment that was. Ukrainians are still supporting Zelensky, despite, as I said, the issues that Ukrainians are having. And the third revelation came from the journalistic investigation into the Russian Red Cross. That was an absolute travesty. Now, for a while now, we knew that Russian Red Cross was complacent to a lot of activities. They have been stated to aid Russians in kidnapping Ukrainian children, but now more and more data has been coming in that Russian Red Cross was also working closely with Russian, and I want to say big quotes, patriotic organizations where the kids in Russia are being trained on how to assemble, disassemble weapons, on how to assault the positions, you know, these nice games that Russians are having in their patriotic camps, or how to guide the drones. I wonder what they're preparing them for. And Red Cross has been doing a lot of other things on the occupied territories in assistance to the Russian occupation authorities. Specifically, this is important not just because the Russian Red Cross is financed by the Russian state, but because Russian Red Cross is being financed by the International Red Cross. Since 2022 to 2024, the reports are that the Red Cross from International Red Cross has more than doubled support for the Russian Red Cross, making the support for them go into many, many millions of euros. And this is important again from us because the International Red Cross is supported by not just regular people. Like, for example, here in Denmark, we had Support Ukraine at the start of the war, and it was International Red Cross that was doing these fundraisers for supporting of Ukraine, and some parts of that money went to Russian Red Cross to support the Russian patriotic initiatives and kidnapping of Ukrainian children. But also the European powers and our governments are supporting the International Red Cross and essentially by proxy promoting the kidnapping of Ukrainian children. This revelation has been a very much mask-off moment as well, that it is now absolutely intransparent what International Red Cross is doing, and the support for this must stop. So if you're going to be writing this message, please make sure to mention the activities of the International Red Cross and the fact that they're supporting atrocities against Ukrainian population. So if you want to support Ukraine, if you want to make sure that your funds are actually doing the job that they need to do, the best way is to participate into the direct fundraiser with verified volunteer organizations such as Jugaspaw that has an absolutely impeccable record, and we are working with them for that reason. Guys, we're doing fantastically, over 38,000. The tempo is really good. It is higher than I was even expecting. It's a long-term fundraiser we're going to be doing. 400,000 is a lot, but I will have more and more different motivations that we're going to be doing, and we're going to have some surprises for you going along. Participate in fundraiser, get yourself a patch, get yourself some other goodies, and you will help Ukraine the best way possible. Support Ukraine, trust in Ukrainian armed forces. If you're European, now it's the time to act. We need to make sure our politicians hear our voice. I love you, and I will see you next time.